Hi, folks. Welcome to the Economic Reality Channel. My name is Kurt. Thanks for stopping by. I wanted to get into a couple things today. In my last video, I had mentioned that chart that led me to believe that there might be cash or liquidity crisis in our banks due to this government shutdown. And I wanted to share that chart with you. So this is from June through the end of October, and you can see this is where the banks were borrowing money, and then on October 31st it just skyrocketed to $52 billion. So again, that's kind of caught my eye, and I do think it'll lead to other types of events that I'll get into here. So day 41 of the government shutdown today is November 10th. And like I mentioned before, I thought that, I was reporting that air travel was being disrupted, and it's gotten worse. In fact, one headline says thousands of passengers grounded across U.S. as Republic, American United, Air Canada, Frontier, and more airlines face more than 2,000 cancellations and 7,065 delays in Memphis, Charlotte, Greensboro, Lexington, Little Rock, Buffalo, and beyond. So it is starting to impact other industries, banking, airlines, as mentioned before. If you woke up outside of the city of New York, congratulations. That's the good news for the day. Some of you may know why. Gold and silver are up after there's been talk that it looks like they may have a government CR bill that they may agree on. Looks like the Senate is trying to pass it. Whether it gets through the House, I don't know. Don't know what's in the bill. It's probably just kicking the can down the road for another 3 or 6 months to get us through the holiday, and then they can drag this out to the midterms next year. So instead of doing their actual job and passing an actual budget, they just continue to just give us these short-term solutions that never seem to work out in our favor. But gold and silver are up. Gold 4,100, silver around 50, crypto's up after a little bit of downslide last week. And now President Trump has floated the idea of stimulus checks, as much as possibly $2,000 per qualified American. And I don't know what those qualifications are, but it's probably going to be much like during COVID when the Fed just started printing money and handing it out to try and pacify the people, because right now a lot of people are not real happy with government and what's going on with the SNAP, with the airlines, with pretty much everything. And yet these guys still continue to receive their paycheck while other essential government employees need to show up for work and are not getting paid. That's why they're not showing up for work. But I don't think stimulus checks are a good idea. It's going to lead us right into the same trap that we had before, where the Fed starts printing money, which, by the way, seems like they printed nearly $250 billion in the last 10 days since, just this month alone. So, that money's being injected into our banking system to keep them going. And I guess they just decide that they'll print more and hand it out to the people to try and buy a little confidence through the holiday. But it always leads to inflation, higher cost of goods. We go to the grocery store and we complain because we don't get much for our money. And it's because the dollar continues to lose value. And every time they print more money, new money, the value of the old money goes down. And that drives the cost of goods up. And I can share that with you because the fiscal year for 2025 for the government runs October to September. So we literally, October to October. So we literally just finished the government fiscal year. And just to show you that 9 out of the 12 months for fiscal year 2025, we were running a deficit. And that deficit, the U.S. Treasury confirms it was $1.8 trillion for the fiscal year. So this means that the government spent $7.1 trillion and only brought in $5.3 trillion in revenue through taxes. And so this is overspending by 34%. And this isn't just this is every year. When you look at the debt that has to be paid, it's just the interest on the debt alone is a little over $1 trillion. So I don't, while they continue to tell us that, the economy's humming, these tariffs are, bringing in all this additional income, the figures don't lie. It's not happening. We're not seeing the economic impact from these tariffs, at least not yet. And I don't think we will, because they're always going to overspend. And so $1.8 trillion overspent for the 12-month period. That's mind-boggling to me. So as it relates to jobs, this global outplacement and executive coaching firm Challenger, Gray, and Christmas, they're pretty reliable as it relates to employment numbers. And they came out for the month of October. Again, this is just October. U.S.-based employers announced 153,074 job cuts in October. Now, I know that in my last video, I mentioned that the government said that they created 14,000 public sector jobs, and how I didn't believe that. So this is telling us that 153,000 jobs were cut in October alone. That's up 175% from October 2024. So not heading in the right direction. It's up 183% from September, the month prior. So October was a devastating month here, and I don't know if that is all related to the government shutdown, because a lot of these jobs were coming from different non-government related companies. As I mentioned, UPS, Amazon, and the likes of those. So, we're starting to see how, in fact, here's an example. Outback, for October, Outback Steakhouse abruptly closed 21 restaurants in October. So if the economy is doing so well and people are out eating, why did 21 Outback Steakhouses get? I think Outback's a great restaurant, but obviously some of those stores are not doing well. But it's starting to impact what I think is going to be the next bubble. And in fact, if you're familiar with the movie, the Big Short, that referenced the 2008 housing crisis, it's a very, very accurate account of what happened. And the main character in the movie is Dr. Michael Burry. He was the one that created the financial instrument to short the housing market, and everybody thought he was crazy. And he made a fortune when it was finally over. And so a pretty smart guy, and he's been quiet for the last 2 years. He's runs the handle on X, goes by Cassandra, and I think it's been 2 years since he's even said anything. Well, it was reported recently that he's shorted the tech and AI through NVIDIA and Palantir. NVIDIA is the giant chip maker, and Palantir is the data collection centers that I refer to as Skynet, if you're familiar with the Terminator series. But he's shorted both of them by $1.1 billion. So clearly he sees, a bubble, as he says. Sometimes we see bubbles in the AI and tech industry. And it's the AI and tech industry, probably the top 10 AI and tech companies are the ones that are pretty much keeping the markets afloat. They probably represent a large percentage of capital in the markets. So he's shorted NVIDIA and Palantir. And ironically, last week on Friday, I looked at the stock for both companies, and NVIDIA, for last week alone, they were down 14%, and Palantir for the 5 days was down 17%. So whether his shorts were accurate or had an impact on the company stock remains to be seen. But it's interesting when you start digging into this and you start noticing that a lot of the insiders, when I say insiders, meaning like CEOs of companies, the Jeff Bezos, this guy from NVIDIA. So the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, just in the month of October, sold $42 million of his own stock. Now, he's the primary shareholder, and he, still has plenty of stock, but for the year to date, 2025, he's sold about $1.1 billion, $1.1 billion of his own stock. So, and it just so happens when he sold at the end of December, they were at their all-time high. So whether these people have insider information and they're, acting on that, I don't know. But it just seems that all of them kind of know when to sell, when the bubble is about to pop. And right now, Warren Buffett is more liquid in cash than he ever has been. So I think these are all indicators that, this government shutdown, which is impacting SNAP and now I believe impacting the banking system, and I believe it's going to, escalate into the markets, and we could see some crashing going on in the markets if this government shutdown continues. And this AI and tech stuff is going to impact us down the road either way, because the amount of energy that's required, the amount of water that's required to run these data centers is unbelievable. And, we're trying to, create this conflict down in Venezuela. And as I mentioned, it's because they're sitting on the world's largest oil reserves, and energy is going to be extremely necessary in the years to come. In fact, as soon as next year, and a lot of people are already seeing their energy bills go up. And this might be a extremely cold winter, and so it's going to require extra energy to heat homes. And we saw what happened a couple years ago in Texas when that grid nearly collapsed completely. So these data centers, I'm looking at an article from Hedge, written by Charles Smith, and he's kind of promoting a book about the risk of AI isn't Skynet. And he talks about some different things, but I just wanted to read an excerpt where he basically talks about the amount of energy and water requirement that is required with this AI. It says ChatGPT uses so much energy that the U.S. is literally reversing course on coal, gas usage to make up for it. In Santa Clara, for example, data centers used 60% of the entire city's energy, the city's electricity. 60%. Santa Clara, that's a fairly big city. And you're telling me that one data center used more than half for the entire population? It says ChatGPT uses 1 to 3 bottles of water for cooling every query you put into it. 1 to 3 bottles of water. This is fresh water, which is evaporated and eventually mostly returns to the ocean, effectively removing a lot of it from our already dwindling freshwater supply on the planet. And farmers are starting to see this in their aquifers, when water's needed to, grow these crops, and they're noticing that these aquifers are dropping. A lot of it has to do with these data centers. So we're creating a lot of future problems, current and future problems, with the creation of all these data centers. And they're going up everywhere. The one in, I believe, Texas that Meta is building, they're building one there. They're building one in Virginia. Google's got theirs going up. All the AI companies are building data centers. The one that Meta has, wherever it is, it's the biggest construction project in U.S. history. That includes the Hoover Dam. And it's reported that this data center will be about 80 to 85% the size of Manhattan Island. Now, 85% of New York City. That's how big it is. Consider how big New York City is. It takes you, 10 minutes to take a subway from, Central Park all the way down to Battery Park. And, there's just thousands of buildings in between. And this one data center is going to be that big. So when you consider the amount of energy that's going to be required and the amount of water to cool these units, it's just massive. And it's going to create a lot of problems for us because these data centers come first. They're considered essential or part of national security. So, if and when there becomes, power shortages, it's going to be the people that get, the rolling brownouts or, the restrictions put on them that you're using too much energy. And, it's going to be from this additional demand that these data centers. So I'll keep reading. So ChatGPT, it also consumes 17,000 times more electricity than the average American home. 17,000 times. Wow. The AI boom wastes so much electricity that we are very immediately risking U.S. cities having to go to rolling blackouts just to keep up with the energy demands as early as next year. What I just mentioned. Gen AI's water usage is projected to hit 6.6 billion meters cubed by 2027. So these are all indications of what is coming, down the road for us. The government continues to overspend by nearly 34% just in year 2025. And it doesn't appear to be slowing down. We continue to escalate things around the globe with tensions in the Middle East and Venezuela, Russia, China, Iran. So, I think they're, setting us up for a crash landing. And, when that black swan event happens, we have that 72-hour bank holiday where, a Friday or a Monday, they emergency close the banking system. I think when it reopens, it's going to look entirely different. And I think they're trying to move us to not only a digital ID, but a digital currency. I don't know what that'll look like. I don't think many people do. There's speculation that, it'll be some kind of digital dollar, probably backed by nothing, just like the dollars today. But as long as we continue to overspend with the government, kick can down the road, they're going to throw some peanuts to the people, try and, buy a little confidence, buy a little time, buy 3 or 6 more months, get us through the holiday. But at some point, this system, implodes, because it just can't continue to borrow and print its way out of its problems. And so just something to think about. I know that's a lot of bad news, but until they get this shut down, something put in place, a real budget, and they actually start limiting spending and staying within that budget, then these types of problems, this increase in inflation, this increase in cost of everything, is going to just continue to progress and go up. And, so that's it for now. I appreciate y'all being here. I'll try to give an update later this week. Down in sunny Florida, and it just got a little cool this morning, so I can only imagine what it's like up from my home in western North Carolina. I think they were expecting possible snow today. So I'll leave it there. Thanks for being here. See you on the next video. Thanks. Please remember, like, share, subscribe. I'm trying to grow this thing and still try to figure out how to get subs, but and improve video quality. So I'll figure it out. And in the meantime, y'all take care.